Welcome to the Jeff Miller Show. Each week, Jeff Miller of the Jeff Miller Consulting Alliance talks with Podcast Village host Charlie Burney about trends in business, consulting, and much more. The Consulting Alliance offers strategic counsel and tactical support to businesses, corporations, and nonprofit organizations in the Washington, D.C. area and beyond.
I am delighted today to have Jeff Miller back in the Intergalactic Podcast Village studios. Jeff, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Charlie. How you doing? It's good to see you again.
It's good to be back here with you.
Hard to believe that the summer is almost done.
So, Jeff, the reason I'm excited not only is to see you, my good friend, but also because this is the start of something extremely exciting, start of something big, and that is the Jeff Miller Show. Coming on regularly, we'll be going on iTunes, we'll be meeting once a week, and I am so thrilled and excited to be joining you on this new endeavor for the Jeff Miller Consulting Alliance and for the Jeff Miller Show. So I am thrilled, Jeff.
Well, I am also very, very thrilled, looking forward to it. This is a great format. You're fantastic, and it's just it's a fun way to spend a little bit of time and end the week on it.
It's a fun way to spend some time, and like we keep saying, it's a great way to connect to our fans, our friends, our associates, our peers, and give them these messages. Your shows have been very popular and continue to get played, and we're going to push those a little more because now we're building on. This is number 6, and we're building a whole body of work here. So very excited about going on iTunes. But how have you been, though, Jeff? And what are we going to talk about today? What are the big rocks we're going to talk about today?
We've been great. Spent a week at the Berkshires, which was fantastic. We'd never been.
Oh, really?
That was our first time, and actually we're blown away. We went to the Norman Rockwell Museum.
Have never been,
with not a whole lot of expectations, and it was like, my goodness. What that man produced in a lifetime.
Was that where he was from then, Jeff? I'm not,
I think
not
he was from the New York area. He spent time in Massachusetts, some time in Vermont.
Okay.
There's one room where you walk in and it has over 300 of his covers. Every single cover. Starting from 1916 to 1963. And what's interesting is after he left the Saturday Evening Post, some of his stuff started getting political and reflective of the times of the day, the struggles, the civil rights movement, some of the war issues around Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So it was really interesting because the association is always apple pie and mom and Americana with Norman Rockwell, and certainly there's that segment of it. But later on, he started taking on some interesting...
So now I'm going to have to go back and think about that when I look at the pictures.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah, really cool. What was fascinating, for me was Norman Rockwell. So, he's an illustrator. You see the amount of work that went in, from photography to oil paintings. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it just seems that this cover appears.
Yeah.
But there's so much work that went in behind it, and you could feel his passion and his focus on what he was doing, and it was so clear to him what he wanted this final piece to be like, but there was a lot of work that went into it.
So I guess when you're surrounded by all of that, you get a feeling for his passion, for his techniques and success as well. You can see his drive. It must have been exciting to be around him. I know that as an amateur doodler, I love looking at the pictures of the artist making the work. There's many pictures of Rockwell doing that work, or the classic one of him painting himself looking around the corner. So going to Rockwell and seeing all of this, you really get a feel that probably I've never had for his.
Well, and you see that the original of him painting himself, and then an image of him in the mirror looking at himself painting himself. It was really.
I think I have seen that. That's
It's fascinating stuff, and again, it points to. Any success is always based on an incredible amount of hard work. There's a whole psychology around talent and whether you're born with it. The fact of the matter is anybody who's successful at anything they do, they have a desire to be the best, to be the expert, and then they put the work in. And that's an interesting conversation to have in present-day America. Whether it's in the business world, whether it's the world of education, whether it's whatever we're looking at, it seems that we look for simple, easy, fast solutions.
I want to get the latest viral video. I want to get a million hits and sit back and live on the $5 a month that it'll send me.
Exactly.
No, I'm being silly at the end, but it is an instant gratification world we live in. And when you're listing those professions, I was thinking in entertainment, where to paraphrase it, you show me an overnight success and I'll show you 30 years worth of work.
Exactly.
I'm not sure that's quite the way it's said, but every guy in Nashville who might become an overnight success has been at Tootsie's for the last 20 years trying to pound out another version of rolling in my sweet baby's arms or whatever it is.
Well, Malcolm Gladwell talks about that in The Outliers. He talks about, you look at any success, whether it's Bill Gates or Michael Jackson or the Beatles, it's always predicated. There's a happenstance of luck, being born in the right environment,
Sure.
And being exposed to available resources. I mean, for instance, Bill Gates had access to a computer at the age of 13.
Right, and a garage, the other thing he needed, and stuff like that.
But then he also put in 10,000 hours
worth of work.
And the Beatles, before the British invasion, were playing at strip clubs in Hamburg.
And that is true,
10,000
absolutely
hours.
true. Yeah.
So unfortunately, the downside of this,
that's right. He's holding up his phone, folks. You can't see that, but no, that's what we're getting back to is our technology and our society creates a mindset. Can you help me out here? That makes us think I can be that. I don't have to put the 20 years into it anymore. Because if I come up with that right little hook, it's a classic get rich quick mentality. But I worry that the immediacy of the digital age does foster that. If I can just come up with that one thing, that one app.
There are fixed the overnight successes, and there are people that hit that track and they go viral. And then there's the rest of the 99% of us. So the challenge for us who are
is to live in the real world,
and we're here dealing with our reality, and it's how are you dealing with it? And how are you controlling the events as opposed to allowing the events control you? And again, it goes back to there is no substitute for hard work. I shared on an earlier podcast when my brother and I went down to spring training to see the Mets, and you're watching these multi-million-dollar athletes that have been doing the same drill since they're 9 years old, and they're still taking ground balls.
And they very rarely mention what their careers were in the minors, and they never really talk about the college years and the little league years. And we're very excited here at Podcast Village, Jeff. I haven't even told you this, but we have a chance maybe of getting to do some work with Cal Ripken. And there's a guy who's all about baseball. A lot of things that he's doing that are really unique and really interesting. And I hope we get to do it because it would be a lot of fun.
Well, I know a 30-and-a-half-year-old woman who happens to be our daughter who would break the door down and
is that right?
to meet Cal. Yeah, she and Cal.
We have some trades to do.
Okay, yeah, we can work that out.
We have some trades to do. I've only met him once, but that was a long time ago. This is he's promoting something, and they're interested in a small series. So success. Let's talk a little more about that momentum.
I think the first challenge, and it sounds almost overly simplistic, is you need to define what the success that you're looking for is. You can't be an expert in something if you don't actually define what do you want to be an expert at. And it's not a track, it's not a path that most of us are led down. Again, it goes back to somehow success, other people deserve success. You're born into success. You're handed, no, you need to define it. And it's my old favorite quote of Warren Buffett, who says you don't need to be extraordinary in order to accomplish extraordinary results. You just need to know what you want.
See, that's the telling part. And again, in a digital society, we love getting a job and having people tell us what to do. So I don't have to set that goal because I'm lazy. I'm overstating it, obviously, but there's a part of us that says, that's too much work to try and define all these things. I'll just get a job. And as you know, we talk to startups all the time on our other show launch podcast. So it's very interesting that I'm thinking about all the guys and girls that I've talked to and how they do. Some do, and some don't have a defined idea of where they're going and how to measure that, progress when they get there. You're right. I guess a lot of it's just pushing forward without any destination.
It's an interesting phenomena, and certainly a lot of people that I speak with, and certainly my clients, one of the more interesting challenges that we have is actually sitting down and setting a goal, is actually stating,
I believe you. Yeah.
what is it that we want to accomplish?
Yeah.
Whether that's through a monetary goal, whether it's through personal growth, whether it's life balance, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's stunning sometimes how difficult it is for us as a society to set goals. We talk about it all the time. But there's no real skill set.
Yeah.
And to me, it's phenomenal, because once you actually do it and you say, that was pretty simple. Not necessarily easy, but it's a pretty simple formula.
Right.
State, what is it that I want? When do I want to have it by?
Right.
What are the action steps that I need to do, and how do I reverse engineer it and create a timeline?
Right.
So I just understand, okay, if I want to accomplish this by February of 2016, I need to start working the plan in order to do that.
Yep.
And who's going to hold me accountable and
to doing that?
Yeah.
Well, you noticed, I couldn't agree with you more. You noticed that I told you I needed to send you something, and I went and put it on my to-do list that I'm now carrying with me, because I'm trying to embrace what you're saying. This is my aspect of it, but I am very familiar with that. There's a small story I've been wanting to illustrate as a gift to my wife for years. I never start early enough, and I think about second week of December, once again, I'm not going to have time to get that one done. So I'm trying, not for that job, but for the other things, that I'm trying to set this to-do list. And what I'm finding is it's not enough to set it. I have to check it in the morning and check it in the evening and decide if I can do those things and get them done. But I have to create, and we've talked about this earlier, I have to create that routine where I do check it, I do check them off and follow through on those tasks, so that I can get to the end result, which is my success, and different for everybody. But
yeah, and my approach in general is a holistic one, because you can't look at things in a vacuum. One thing affects something else. So you can't look at goal setting without looking at time management, because the days run past, they fly by. As we said earlier, it's hard to believe that summer is over.
I can't.
So the challenge is always one of time management. There are only 24 hours in the day.
Yeah.
How do you maximize it? How do you structure it? How do you take control of it?
Yeah.
Again, for those out there who can't see, I'm holding up my phone.
Your phone.
We only have 24 hours.
Well, Jeff, how do you manage time, or how do you suggest we manage time? I'm trying to, when it's a task, this is from Covey, I think, when it's a task that's longer than 15 or 30 minutes, I put it in as a calendar block, as an hour length of time. Edit Jeff Miller Show. Is that what are other methods that that might prove successful? Because that's such a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think before you come up with the method, there's more of a paradigm shift that most of us need to make on how we're viewing the time, how we're valuing the time.
Okay, go into that a little for me.
It seems to me that when we talk about time management, we're always willing to waste 5 minutes here or 10 minutes there or 15 minutes here, because it's only 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. If you look at it differently and not look at it as time management, but look at it as self-management, and look at it as, if you were to add up all of those 10 or 15-minute blocks and look back in 30 years, how much of yourself have you given away? So we don't take time seriously enough.
I've never heard it described this way, I don't think.
And I think when you make that paradigm shift, now we understand it a little bit differently, because there are different techniques that speak and work for different people. And I could talk about 2 or 3 of them. I could talk about the one that I use, which is completely counterintuitive, which was taught to me by my coach, who's just a magnificent guy. But until you're able to make that shift and say, you know what, I am committed to controlling my time, not the reverse, then the system that you employ doesn't really matter, because it won't really work.
I believe you.
So I think the concept of batching, the concept of using your calendar is important. I approach it a little bit differently. I look at my day and sort of do a brain dump first thing in the morning. And I list out all of my appointments. I list out all of my to-dos. I list out all the things I need to get done. And that includes both personal and professional. And that might include call up one of my daughters. It may say, today's your nephew's birthday, call your nephew.
Yeah.
So I list all of that out first. It's what we call the brain dump.
Okay.
Then I walk away, take a shower, come back to it, kind of revisit, and now I start strategizing on the day, and I assign how much time each of these activities is going to take me.
Okay.
So when all is said and done, I've got my activities. I add up the amount of time.
Oh,
and
really?
Then I divide it by 60, and I see how many hours does this list of mine today is it going to take.
Wow.
And if it's 13 hours, I need to make some adjuststants.
I have not heard of this.
So what's really cool is that without prioritizing, because there's no priority.
It's self-prioritizing in a way.
If it's on the list, it's going to get done. Because it's within that ascribed number of hours.
Yeah.
It's a great system.
That's pretty cool.
There's a whole visual element to it that is difficult to communicate here.
Yeah.
But the key is, so I walk around with this pad all the time.
Yeah.
And it's been pretty great. And
I'm
going to
be watching
pretty
you.
efficient.
I'm going to be watching you.
Yeah, watch out, Charlie.
I used to try and organize. I had in my old job, I had a program called Mind Manager. I can't really afford it now, but it's really interesting, and that's why I had the large screen mind mapping tool. So I would say the Jeff Miller Show, and then I could have all the little shoots off, and it could have to-dos. And I loved working that. But to be honest with you, I spent more time playing with the manager tool than I did doing things. But I realized how much fun it was, but that it really was using my time to do this thing. Then it could have just been making phone calls,
Right. And again,
I spent too much time playing with a little,
And that goes back to having a clear purpose and sense.
Thank you.
Of
Yes.
what you need to accomplish.
Yes.
And social media is great.
Yep.
Facebook is great.
Yep.
It's the challenge of the black hole.
100%.
So if I'm going to get involved in Facebook today, I'm going to block off a 15-minute period to do it.
Right.
And I'm not going to extend that 15 minutes.
Right. Sure.
The black hole of social media it's
deep.
3 hours later, you're kind of coming up for air.
Yeah. I think the thing that's helped me with Facebook, as silly as it sounds, is I admin several pages for other people now. So I realize I've got to go in and get out.
Right.
There's no time. There's no time to look at cat videos anymore. As much as I, need to look at cat videos. No, I see a comment on someone else's page. I try to respond to that comment and then go. It is a real time sucker. You're absolutely right. But now you make me nervous thinking about all those 5 minutes and 10 minutes that I could have written the great American novel. My father said it to my wife once differently, Jeff. They were talking about books. So if you can forgive me for a moment. And he said she was talking. She's a voracious reader, and you and I have talked about this.
As is your daughter.
As is my daughter. Yes, thank you. Isabel's podcast, Isabel's bookcase. So she was talking about all the books, and she just, she didn't have time to read all the books that she wanted. And just as perhaps you or I do, I'm sure I'm guilty of it, I read occasionally trash, airport novels or bad James Bond novels, And he said to Alice, and he never said it to me, he said, imagine the largest bookcase you've ever seen. And on one little corner on one side is a stack of books. Those are the ones you get to read, and that's it. And there's that many more books. I'm not saying it quite right, but you get the image. And she just kind of went, oh, no. So for a while, I don't think she read trash for about 5 years. But it does make you sort of reassess your priorities. And I appreciate what you said, because now I'm thinking about, and I need to reinforce it, thinking about self-management. I'd never heard it described that way. So that is a real key element for me from our show today, is self-time management. Self-management makes so much more sense, because I'm always battling against time and feeling that it does have the upper hand on me. But this gives you the empowerment, I guess is the right word, to take control of your destiny and
I think
move forward.
That's a brilliant way of putting it. It is all about empowerment and empowering yourself.
Self-empowerment, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And again, that's something that we tend to feel, oh, well, woe is me, it's beyond my control, I can't handle this, I can't foresee that. No, you can actually take much more control of your time if you're willing to make the commitment and the sacrifice and have the clarity around what it is that you want to accomplish, or to bring it back to where we started.
Yeah.
If you want to be a success, what do you want to be a success at, and what do you need to develop in order to do that?
Yeah,
And
perfect.
so.
And gosh. Well, I think we may want to follow up and talk about that in the future, but what a pleasure, Jeff. I looked forward to this all week. You are the highlight of my week because of things we talked about off the air, and what a pleasure. Thank you so much for signing on, and we'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it, Charlie. Thank you.
The Jeff Miller Show is brought to you by Podcast Village, located at Launch Workplaces in Gaithersburg, Maryland. If you would like to contact Jeff or Charlie, please tweet to @PodcastVillage or @JeffMillConsult. You can also email Jeff at jeff@jmconsultingalliance.com.